following is an in-depth analysis. If you haven't seen this movie, you might want to before watching this review. Sometimes in life we try things that seem like a wonderful idea at the time, but ultimately prove to be entirely unrealistic, short-sighted, maybe even a little stupid. Trying to make an 80-minute live-action traditional superhero origin story out of Underdog is one of those things. But so was thinking I could do an in-depth analysis of every English-language superhero movie ever made. Nah, I'm not a moron. I realize we're not generally dealing with the deepest or most highbrow of subject matters. I'm not expecting every movie about somebody running out in their pajamas and a cape, stopping bad guys, to have subtext within subtext or give me some sort of life-changing epiphany. Sure, I had that with Batman Begins. I'll never leave the opera through the side door into a shady back alley ever again, but I can't expect everything to be that insightful. Least of all a live-action movie based on a 50-year-old cartoon cashing in on a recognizable name that absolutely no one was clamoring for, about a dog that rhymes, breaks stuff, saves people, and is unabashedly making fun of Superman. There's so little to that cartoon, I don't know why anyone would expect much of anything from this movie, and finally watching it for this review, I gotta say, it's about what I figured. It's a formulaic origin story that falls back on corny, juvenile, uninspired jokes with mediocre acting, passable special effects, and an attempt at updating and contemporizing the recognizable elements of the source material in order to appeal to a mass audience. And in fear of alienating, I don't know, people who won't accept a rhyming, incompetent superhero dog wearing a cape without some lame explanation for everything, I mean, seriously, we need a genesis for why Underdog says there's no need to fear Underdog is here, and we've got to spell out what the word Underdog means? The movie was sold on, look, cute beagle in a cape. Everybody loves dog movies, right? No, look, it's a real dog. He's only CGI like 40% of the time. This wasn't for people who loved the cartoon, though it tries half-heartedly to throw them a bone here and there, and I promise that's the last time I use the phrase throw them a bone in this review. It's just another dog movie, and Disney is notorious for cute, paper-thinly plotted dog movies. Here are just a few of them. Homeward Bound 2 Lost in San Francisco, 101 Dalmatians, 102 Dalmatians, Air Bud Golden Receiver, Air Bud 3 World Pup, Air Bud 7th Inning Fetch, Air Bud Spikes Back, Air Buddies, Life is Rough, Beverly Hills Chihuahua. Obviously, the filmmakers did a great job making this accessible to a general audience. It barely made its money back, and the critics totally panned it. But that didn't stop Disney from pumping out more and more of these brainless things. We've had tons more Disney dog movies since 2007. Nah, that's not fair. I shouldn't totally dismiss things I've never seen. Maybe Santa Buddies, Space Buddies, and Treasure Buddies were all wonderfully engrossing films that captured the imaginations of everyone who saw them. And, oh no. No. Super Buddies? Underdog hardly performed, and 6 years later Disney put out another cash-in superhero dog movie? Direct-to-video, but still. Really? Oh man, I draw the line there. I will review Son of the Mask, and I will review the Darkman sequels, and I'll even plunge myself into the Seventh Circle of Hell and tackle the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Coming Out of Their Shells tour, but this is where I draw the line. And yet I am weak and must submit to the will of my arbitrarily and naively conceived vows, and I'll probably end up doing that one too. It's awkward to review movies like this in my format because there's just nothing here worth an in-depth analysis. It's a poor man's Spider-Man, except replace Peter Parker with a clumsy dog that's not good at anything. It's bland, unfunny, and insulting to your intelligence. And trust me, you could be the dumbest person I know, and you're better than the spoon-feeding this movie gives you. But I'm going to do my level best to deliver a comprehensive review. Don't expect me to dig for meaning and depth that's not there, though. This ain't about telling a story. This is about mining properties that used to be popular, resurrecting them in the form of abominable, almost unrecognizable perversions of their former selves to make a quick buck. Nobody here, except the actors playing villains maybe, look like they're really passionate about this project. Everybody knows what they're making, and it's not even trying to elevate itself above derivative schlock. It feels like a bunch of junior high kids getting together, all unenthusiastic to do some group English presentation. They put in the work and they do the job, but nobody's heart is really in in it. Sometimes I think Hollywood mistakes accessible for recognizable, like all it takes to satisfy idiot popcorn-buying patrons is to regurgitate stuff they've all seen 1,000 times with one minute twist they can sell the movie on. But this one's a dog in a cape. My 3-year-old liked the parts where there was a flying dog on screen, and who can blame him? But he was bored silly and walked off through most of the rest of it. There's a big difference between the notions of some ideas never get old and genre movies must always be done exactly the same way. Now I'd like to summarize Underdog without ever using the name of a character in the film or the word dog. See if you've heard this one before. An outcast who is ridiculed by his peers winds up with superpowers after a freak accident. Timid and unsure of what to do with these new gifts, he tries out his new powers and finds them difficult to adjust to. He develops a second identity and a costume after deciding that using these gifts for good is his responsibility and his inescapable destiny. But juggling his normal persona with his super persona proves complicated, and he fears putting the people he cares about in danger. He thinks he wants his normal life back and even has a lapse where he doesn't have his superpowers anymore, giving him the chance to try that life. But his sense of duty and confidence have grown too much through these experiences, and by the denouement, he's overcome his insecurities through defeating the villain whose actions he's somewhat responsible for because he got in the villain's way, and that villain's plot involves endangering the hero's loved ones in direct retaliation. The film ends establishing the hero's comic book-esque status quo, a backdrop that could be used behind any number of further formulaic adventures. But, Captain Logan, you say, this is a parody. Of course it's by the numbers and rips all its plot points off other popular superhero movies. If this was pure farce, just satirizing superhero stories, I'd be fine with that. Though we've had enough of those by 2007, I'd hope it could bring something new to the table. But A, it's not clever or smart enough, and B, it doesn't often present itself in that way at all. There are some token moments where it's directly spoofing another film, like the scene where Underdog flies Polly around the city like the famous scene in Superman. Wait, that's Amy Adams voicing Polly? That's bizarre historical foreshadowing. Amy Adams played a crypto-freak in a first-season Smallville episode. Then she voiced a parody of Lois Lane here, and finally actually is Lois Lane now in Man of Steel. Reality really is sometimes stranger than fiction. Oh, and side note, Polly doesn't know Shoeshine and Underdog are the same person because she's supposed to be like Lois Lane, but that worked in the cartoon because they acted like people, not dogs. These dogs act like real dogs, except for when they don't. Don't dogs recognize each other's scents? So shouldn't Polly know Underdog is Shoeshine instantly by smelling him, even disregarding the fact that he doesn't wear a mask and he looks identical to the only other beagle we see her interact with? See, it's just never tongue-in-cheek or consistently silly enough for me to buy that parody is the movie's primary MO. It's another movie that pleases no one by trying to please everyone, and is completely mediocre because it takes zero risks at all. Primarily, rather than parody, it's relying on tired, worn-out dog jokes and dog puns. This is about on the same level as Catwoman, except without the racial stereotypes and the overt sexualization, because I don't know how you do that in this movie. You take a character, trim it down to its bare bones, and then build everything from the superficial foundation of what it looks like. So Catwoman does a bunch of cat-like stuff. There's cat jokes and cat puns, and Underdog is about a dog, so despite the fact that his being a dog in the cartoon has nothing to do with his personality or the stories in those cartoons, this movie tries to coast on that fact as a novelty. There's a hot dog joke, a dog crap joke, a joke about the dog ruining the furniture, and he buries stuff in the dirt. The list goes on and on. This movie relies more heavily on dog references than Batman and Robin relied on ice puns. Now, I want to stop here in case there's any misunderstanding. I can't get all bent out of shape because somebody went off and ruined Underdog. If anybody listening is a huge Underdog fan, I expect you were furious and I empathize. But it's not a cartoon I really grew up with, and I don't have a lot of investment in it. The thing is, I'm honestly not sure there's really a movie here. You're taking an incredibly simple, sort of one-note joke cartoon and trying to make an 80-minute movie out of it. That's 40 minutes shorter than most of the live-action movies I've reviewed on this series, and it's stretching hard for material to fill that time. So let's look now at the original Underdog formula and see what they had to work with in the first place. Here is your typical Underdog episode. Some problem is established, sometimes as small as a kid's trapped in a bank safe, and sometimes as big as the evil villain Bar Sinister is turning everyone into pictures with a camera he invented. These examples are all from the first episode of Underdog. That's, by the way, all the research the filmmakers would have had to do to get the movie they made, I think. Underdog flies in, causes extensive amounts of property damage, pisses off all the townspeople, but smugly and confidently states, "I am the hero who never fails. I cannot be bothered with such details." He then solves the problem effortlessly because he has superpowers, because his name's in the title. Then people are glad he saved the day despite all the damage. At the end, there's always a crowd of people and somebody says, "It's a bird," another, "It's a plane," and it's always the same heavyset, cross-eyed lady who awkwardly says, "It's a frog," just so our hero can rhyme again and say not bird, nor plane, nor even frog, it's just little old me, Underdog. Obviously, it was making fun of the old Fleischer Superman serials, where Superman always wins, nobody ever questions anything he does, and the whole world would crash down without him. This is one of the earliest times I can think of on television anyone really made fun of all the property damage superheroes would have to cause during their adventures that's always ignored in classic superhero stories. There's not a lot of substance to it. The feature film incorporates all of those things, but loses the spirit and the brand of comedy of the original material. Number 1, he's now a regular dog in a normal-looking, unstylized world, instead of an anthropomorphic dog that nobody gives a second thought when he's in his everyday persona as a Shoeshine Boy. Number 2, instead of Shoeshine Boy, he's named Shoeshine by his new owner, who takes him home after almost running him down with his car in a shallow attempt at improving his relationship with his son. He's named that because the dog licks the man's shoes. Brilliant. Number 3, Shoeshine is a total screw-up, he's clumsy, he knows it, and he spends the whole movie apologizing for it. So the major conceit of the original cartoon is lost in favor of forced and obligatory character development. The movie uses Underdog's recklessness to try to make him the actual dictionary definition of an underdog, and like everything else, he doesn't come up with the name or the concept on his own. He needs Jack, his new owner, to explain to him what an underdog is, and the movie thinks it's pretty clever for thinking to go in that really obvious direction with this concept and title, and it's got to be based on a local Pee-wee baseball team that Jack's dad was on when he was a kid, and that's where they get the outfit from, shrinking it by putting it in the dryer. At least it doesn't look like Jack spent thousands of dollars on it like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. This on-the-nose method is like if somebody did a Mighty Mouse origin movie, and Mighty Mouse started out as a hobo living under an opera theater, and opera music inspired him to become a superhero. Or if you made a Woody Woodpecker movie, and he never laughed like that until he saw an infomercial where a Billy Mays-type salesperson started doing that. You instantly steal away some of these cartoon characters' uniqueness and simplicity by coming up with a stupid genesis for everything. A lot of the natural humor in a cartoon is the repetition of a weird trademark idiosyncrasy a character does for no reason except they wouldn't be themselves without it. Daffy Duck's laugh, Bugs Bunny's "What's up, Doc?" Wile E. Coyote's fourth wall breaking signs. Oh god, imagine the Wile E. Coyote origin movie where he goes deaf and can't do sign language because he only has 4 fingers, so he just writes everything down on signs. Number 4, Underdog still talks in rhyming couplets, but only because he discovers rhyme and becomes obsessed with it. It's completely awkward, and that's supposed to be funny, I guess because that's how he talked in the cartoon, but projected into 2007, people think it's strange and corny. I'm pretty sure even in 1964, if you were wearing a cape and flying around saving people talking like that, people would be like, "Why are you speaking in rhyme? That's irritating. Talk like a normal person." It's not awkward because it's 2007, it's awkward because you're taking a parody and trying to make a legitimate superhero movie out of it. All of that's gonna come off as completely unnatural and not in a funny way, because this isn't the straight-up farce the original Underdog was. Gets even worse when there's even a development of the catchphrase. You're telling me Underdog can't even come up with "there's no need to fear, Underdog is here" without 3 or 4 more awkward iterations of it I can't imagine anyone would think of first? "There's no need to fear, Underdog is here" is a pretty generic catchphrase. You're impressing no one by having Underdog say, "There's no need to worry, Underdog is furry," and "There's no need to fright, Underdog has bite" first. I really think one has to try to succeed as being as lame as this movie often is. The end of the film ends just like the cartoon always did, in that typical reboot origin cap-off where we've seen the hero develop into what we're familiar with, so now we get like 2 minutes of what we might have gone to the theater to see in the first place. Except given the road we've been on the whole movie, this doesn't feel like the natural finishing place so much as the necessary homage to the source material. Underdog changes into his costume, destroys probably the only phone booth left in the whole city, then it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a frog, and everybody goes, a frog, and Underdog says that old signature line, it's just little old me, Underdog. It's ridiculous in this context and not in the way you'd want it to be. If you've never seen it or you don't remember what Underdog was like, you might think that's just another unclever joke that totally misses its mark, making fun of Superman for no good reason. I refamiliarized myself with the cartoon after the movie and said, oh, that's why that ending was there. Okay. So, not accessible to a general audience at all then. We've got gags and nods that only people who remember Underdog would get, and this dull and hackneyed story surely can't be worth those for them. This is probably the bottom of the barrel for superhero origin movies. You don't need to establish how Underdog got his powers, or why he talks like that, or anything. If you're gonna do Underdog, just do Underdog! You don't have to force the comedy. Have it naturally come from everything it came from in the original, and people will either think it's funny, or they won't. The question is, could that cartoon be done effectively in live action? Because like I said, I'm not convinced there was a movie here in the first place. But I will suggest two possibilities. First, create a way out there stylistic Underdog-looking universe. Underdog would be personified, walking on 2 legs, and would have to be done in CG, but it wouldn't seem as out of place as in the Smurfs or Scooby-Doo, because the live-action stuff would be costumed and shot in a topsy-turvy sort of way to match. I'm thinking stylistic like Dick Tracy, just try to make the live action look as close to the original as possible. Go full tilt like the Flintstones movie. You try to capture the spirit and humor of the original, and you create a loose, cookie-cutter plot around the first Superman movie, because Underdog is supposed to be spoofing Superman anyway. You make it totally clear that it's not to be taken seriously and that it's a cartoon. It breaks all the rules of traditional narrative, but does it in a consistent and fun way. And if it's consistent but ludicrous, that's not to say that it can't still even be about something like Roger Rabbit was. Or you go the way of the live-action 101 Dalmatians, which was surprisingly intelligent in its choice not to have the dogs talk. You keep the core joke. Underdog flies around in a cape and tights, breaks stuff, and doesn't care as long as the bad guy gets caught. But you have the added gag of nobody knows where this dog came from or how he got his powers. It would have to center on some human characters and could easily be as unfunny as I thought this was. But at least we'd have the added bonus of not having to listen to this dog drone on and on the whole movie. Speaking of, why all the narration? Why is this thing stealing more from Spider-Man than it is from Superman? The voice isn't the problem. Jason Lee did a fine job voicing this with what he was given, but I have to admit to needing a good half hour to adjust to the fact that I was hearing Syndrome from Incredibles every time Underdog opened his mouth. It seemed a little sinister and wrong for a minute. I kept wanting to call him Incredidog. So am I actually going to do any story analysis for this movie? I'm telling you, it's spoon-feeding and there's nothing even remotely open for interpretation. It's a 3-way character arc of 3 underdogs. Underdog, who is a police dog whose nose doesn't work properly, so when he thinks he smells a bomb, it's really a steak. By the way, I don't know why a beagle is on the police force, let alone why he's even on duty if he's incapable of doing the only thing he's there for. Anyway, then you have Jack and his father, both moping through life since the death of Jack's mother, and like Shoeshine, neither can find any real purpose in life. They all 3 feel hung out to dry. Underdog's powers change that for him. He learns about responsibility and to be incredibly on the nose about it. Literally, his sense of smell improves by the end along with his self-esteem. Sound like anything else we've discussed on Superhero Rewind? I'll give you a hint, it's not a Superman movie. Jack's father learns to take risks like Shoeshine does when he decides to become a cop again at the end, which he had given up because he was afraid of being away from his son. Too bad the movie didn't also learn that lesson about taking risks. Fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with the story of Jack and his father, but it never moves beyond the fundamentals. It's hurried, oversimplified, and this relationship between father and son is completely shallow. The film doesn't even consider that we might want to know why Jack and his father are at odds until 37 minutes in. By that point, I've spent enough time with them to find them totally generic and uninteresting. Give these guys hobbies, interests, something else to do except whine without personality. Now, sometimes Underdog's dog logic is kind of fun. It helps make him likable despite his lack of creativity, because he's just a regular dog who likes regular dog things. But then sometimes it's inconsistent about it. I can't decide if Shoeshine is joking when he gives Jack solid advice about his relationship with his father, give him a break and actually spend some time together, and Jack asks him how he got so smart. He says, genetic engineering, you ought to try it. His advice is pretty obvious, so that might be a joke, but at least for this movie, it's smart for a joke, so it might not be. If it's not a joke, why is he clueless about everything but basic psychology? And if the accident really did make him smarter, why couldn't he be a little more imaginative? A lot of this inconsistency would be cleared up if none of the dogs talked to each other in the movie, and we didn't hear Underdog talk at all until he got chemicals spilled on him. But then you couldn't have Polly, and I couldn't make that sweet observation about Amy Adams. And another side note, the city folk in this movie are real quick to adjust to a flying, talking dog, especially since it takes Jack a lot longer to process it by comparison. It's like because the audience has seen it, the whole universe is reacting differently to it. The villain, Simon Bar Sinister, is a two-dimensional mad scientist bent on world domination, who plans to use a formula that makes everyone do his bidding. After a random dog, Shoeshine, busts up his lab and he gets his face all screwed up, he seems more interested in revenge on Underdog than even in his global takeover plot. The age-old villain created by the hero thing is there, of course, but again, it's obligatory. Underdog tries to defeat him, not even so much because he sees Bar Sinister as his responsibility, as just he has powers, there's a bad guy, his friends are in trouble, he should probably do something about that. At least when Bar Sinister takes away his powers with an antidote, Underdog tries to stop him anyway, which is noble, I guess, as is Underdog's self-sacrifice, where he volunteers to lose his powers earlier to save his friends. There is a hint of that cartoon gag here of Underdog's going to win because his name is in the title. Too often, though, that isn't a joke, it's just true. I do like Bar Sinister quite a bit. He's a cartoon in a movie that's supposed to also be a cartoon. Peter Dinklage has a fun time with it and channels the original character nicely. He's underutilized because the movie is scared of being too silly, and he does a lot of really idiotic things that would be funnier if the movie wasn't asking me to take it more seriously. Why does he carry a bag with pills that give dogs superpowers around with him? Isn't he worried that if he runs into Shoeshine again, he might get his powers back? And when Shoeshine's lying there playing dead, why doesn't Bar Sinister immediately run over there and grab those pills in case he was faking it? And why would any scientist be stupid or desperate enough to take a superpower pill he designed specifically for canines? Worse is that even when he gets superpowers and there are miraculously no side effects, he barely does anything with them at all before Jack's dad and Underdog thwart him. But see, Bar Sinister really is a cartoon, so the bumbling could just be part of the whole package if only the whole movie were like that. The only real sparks of creativity and hilarity come in the bad guy stuff, and I can't totally hate any movie with Patrick Warburton in it. He plays the Tick. Warburton always plays the Tick. In fact, I don't think Barry Sonnenfeld cast the Tick. I think he just looked up the Tick in the phone book and he found Patrick Warburton's name listed there. It's like somebody else wrote all of his dialogue in this movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it was improvised. He's actually genuinely hilarious most of the time as Bar Sinister's sidekick, and their chemistry together is pretty great. There's a running gag where Warburton, as Cad Lackey, keeps insisting that he and Bar Sinister are partners, and toward the end, when he's kidnapped Polly's human owner, she says, "Why are you doing this?" And he says, "Because my partner said he'd fire me if I don't." Throughout the movie, he tries to use a lot of intelligent-sounding vocabulary, often out of context, and I laughed out loud when he said he's using his thesaurus. After the explosion in the lab, he keeps using a lot of P words because only the P's survive the blast. I probably sound like I'm only raving about Warburton because I'm already a fan of some of his other work, and I certainly might not have appreciated him as well if I wasn't familiar with him. But he got me through this movie, and I imagine most people would agree that what he's doing is a lot funnier than lame dog puns. The movie actually has a number of genuinely amusing moments even besides the cartoon villain stuff, but it keeps undercutting those gags by giving the audience no credit, either by telling us that they're funny or why we're supposed to be laughing. For instance, like in Spider-Man, Underdog has a makeshift costume before he gets his real one. It's a fish kite, and he accidentally picks it up flying off from Jack's yard. The visual is pretty funny, but then Shoeshine says, "I hope this doesn't make me look ridiculous," and it's instantly not funny to me anymore. When "I hope I don't look ridiculous" became a running gag, I really started to lose my patience. There's no subtlety whatsoever, either in the humor or the exposition. When Bar Sinister brings Underdog the pill to take away his powers, we're told not once, but twice in succession what the pill does. First in Shoeshine's narration, and then by Bar Sinister himself. We don't need either of those things. The audience is going to get why Underdog lost his powers once a pill gets shoved down his gullet by the bad guy. But I realize I'm expecting too much from a script that thought Underdog needed an origin in the first place. I'm giving Underdog a 1 out of 4. 0.5 for using a real dog as often as the movie could get away with it, and 0.5 for Patrick Warburton. Never have I seen a movie trying to trick me into seeing it as a legitimate dramatic action piece, and I've wanted so badly for it to just be a fun, pointless, silly cartoon. Oh, how I long for some Brack.
Get back here, Harley.
But I want to know who he is, sweetie.
No one's who you think they are, my dear. Why spoil the fun?
It was all a lie. There's nothing wrong with you.
Nice of you to say, but you of all people should know there's plenty wrong with me.